Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Choa, for being here with me, and we're going to go ahead and discuss a little bit of what the findings were for your lesson. So, before we start, how do you feel the lesson went?
I think the lesson went well. I always prefer like a more diverse participation. I had about, probably about 8 kids, maybe 10, that were participating. I got a couple interventions from some students that weren't always involved, so that's always good. But I would like to have been able to put in a few more kids into the discussion. But I
Mm-hmm.
know that some kids just need to observe and listen. You know, but
Yeah.
you know, that's always room for improvement.
Improvement. Great. Those are great observations. And as far as moments that stood out to the lesson for you, what were the moments that stood out to you from your lesson?
You know what? I think the first comment by Matthew, was a great analysis, and it's something that I was looking for. So that was excellent that a student could see that on their own, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I try to frame and connect other comments to that, But so that was nice to see a kid be able to see that. I had a conversation with a kid one on one, towards the end of the period that said that was really eye opening. And then I had another kid mention today to me that it really impacted them. So that just the fact that a kid can talk to you about it the following day is pretty cool.
I agree because it actually is sinking in, and that's where we're getting their own thinking working.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to commend you on. I really liked how you engaged the students, and how you were able to give them some time to wait. I noticed at the beginning you had them read, and then you gave them about like 10 minutes for them to read and reflect on their own before you said anything, and before you read the article with them or the piece, and then they were able to kind of form their opinion. As you did that, your intent was just to kind of get their thinking going, or what is it? What were you trying to accomplish with that? With part of the initial
Yeah,
lesson?
yeah, because I don't want to sway them in one direction or another. I just want them to kind of like begin cementing their own thought,
Mm-hmm.
and see what they gather, and then they can self-assess on their own. Like when I start reading aloud, some of them will notice things that they may not have comprehended on their own. So then they themselves can reflect on the fact that maybe, there's things that they didn't notice, and they can say, for example, that they need to build their reading skills. I think that's something that happens by default because they're like, oh, I didn't think about it that way, or I didn't see that, or I didn't notice that. Just by reading it aloud and reading it on their own. I also want them to formulate their own opinion. And the following, it just gives you a different perspective. I think themselves reading it and then hearing it with the tone that I use and giving it a little more life to it, could help shape a few more other, perspectives.
I agree because I saw most of them were engaged and they were really into the conversation and they were very attentive to you and giving you as much interaction as they felt they could. I also noticed that it was very effective when you gave them a chance to talk to each other. So that I feel like that kind of after you asked the question, you didn't expect them to answer right away. You gave them a little bit more time, and the way that I saw you giving them the time was when you had them collaborate with each other, and you said, "Okay, talk to a partner." And I believe that kind of helped them a little bit to be able to make some type of analysis before like sharing with you. Did you see that as an effective strategy as well?
Yeah, 'cause sometimes they feel safer,
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one and with their peers instead of the large group. So that's the purpose of that. And sometimes for the kids that are shy,
Yeah.
they just don't like to contribute. At least they got to contribute in that sense. And then, it also, to kind of pull some kids in, and even though some of them, I give them that task, I walk around the room and I'm like, now come on, you gotta talk to somebody, man. I don't care what you say. Say something that may be forced, but just start having those conversations. If that's where they are, I meet them wherever they need me to meet them.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. And then they were kind of they were all engaged when they were doing the reflection. Everybody was writing. And I noticed that they were laughing at some of the comments and just kind of the idea of how you were contextualizing or bringing in their perspective in there so they can get a better understanding of the art or the piece. So as far as as far as wait time, how long do you feel that you usually wait before you go on to another question or?
You know what? I never really thought about it. Sometimes I do it consciously. I'm gonna pose this question, give them a little bit of time, like in regards to responding or talking to a peer. But sometimes when we're in the middle of a discussion, I throw like 6, 7 questions in a row, man.
You know what?
And
that's a great observation. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just throw a question after question after question. And some kids, I don't know if this is correct or not. I think some kids catch on to one question. Other kids catch on to another one. Some kids catch on to another one. Some kids catch on to, but I might overwhelm others. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, from the data that I gathered, you do have, you do, again, we talked about the amount of questions like you mentioned right now. And it seems like, you have a lot of questions and that you're giving them on average like from between 2 to 5 seconds before they answer. So I think maybe, like you said, you're kind of just trying to see what question they can catch. So perhaps maybe as a suggestion would be to provide them a little bit more time for them to share before like asking the next question. I noticed maybe like some type of timer before like we go on to the next question would also be something that might be helpful to kind of keep you on track as far as being able to give them that wait time. Or the strategy that you used initially, which was the one where you had them pair share, maybe a couple of questions that you have an idea. Because I know that the discussion kind of flows, so you kind of ask the questions as the discussion goes. But perhaps like a couple of, like I know the main questions that you had were at the beginning and the one that we're going to reflect on in their journals. But perhaps in between, like create a list and then just kind of give them with the timer, just kind of time them for a couple of minutes or just indicate the amount of time you're going to give them before moving on to the next question. How does that sound?
To help them, that makes total sense. Yeah, because I see myself, because they're just questions that are popping in my head. Right. Questions that I want to ask them. Mm-hmm. Those are questions that I want to ask them because I want them to delve deeper. So I'm like, question, boom, but that's at the pace that my mind works.
Right. Yeah. So perhaps kind of slowing it down a bit to kind of get them to, okay, let's... And I noticed you said also initially how we talked about the students that kind of didn't participate, and you said you wished that more students would have participated. Perhaps that could help by giving them a little bit more wait time, and then just having some sort of like random calling system, like in elementary school, the popsicle sticks or just the names themselves. Do you have?
Yeah, I've done that. I have cards.
Okay.
And I just pull out the card so they're like, hey, wait, me tengo que preparar.
Yeah.
Because they'll throw my call on me.
So perhaps like maybe we can try to see if that could be something we can try, like the wait time, increase a little bit of the wait time, and then use some of these random calling things to be able to give them a little bit more time to think for the next observation. How does that sound?
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Okay, perfect. So in your own words, what do you feel that you took away from this conference? As far as
I think it's always good to reflect. That's what I ask my students to do. So there's always reflection. Self-reflection is always towards growth. There's always room for growth. There's always room for improvement. So, and see how that works.
Perfect.
You know, because we fall into the tendency of doing what we're comfortable with.
Correct.
You know, but it's comfortable for me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best for the kid.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. That's a great way to summarize it. Well, I think let's continue to practice on that wait time, like we said, and maybe perhaps for the next observation, we can focus on that and see if that will kind of help a little bit to see if you get more participation from other students, perhaps.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know what?